Before the fame, before the money, there were broken childhoods, abandonment, violence, silence, pain learned, early and never forgotten. It exposed them. These are not success stories. They are the hidden origins of classic rock legends, and the damage that followed them forever. One John Lennon, a childhood built on lost. John Lennon's childhood was defined by abandonment long before fame ever found him. His father disappeared early, leaving John trapped inside a fractured family structure where stability never existed. Passed between adults, he learned that attachment was temporary and unreliable. His mother Julia was emotionally distant for years, a presence more imagined than felt. When Julia finally re-entered his life, she became a symbol of hoponia, to be taken away suddenly in a car accident when John was 17. That loss didn't just hurt him, it shattered him. Grief fused with rage. Trust became impossible. Lennon carried resentment into adulthood, masking pain with sarcasm, cruelty, and confrontation. His sharp tongue and volatility weren't artistic quirks, they were survival tools. Songs about peace and love were written by someone who never experienced emotional safety. Lennon's genius wasn't shaped by joy, it was forged in unresolved grief. His childhood didn't inspire his art, it followed him into every note. To Elvis Presley, born poor. Never escaped it. Elvis Presley was born into severe poverty in Mississippi, surrounded by instability, shame, and constant fear of loss. His twin brother Jesse was stillborn, creating an absence that haunted the family and left Elvis carrying lifelong survivor's guilt. From the beginning, love was paired with death. Unstable housing and financial desperation defined his early years. Elvis internalized insecurity, believing safety could vanish without warning. His bond with his mother became emotionally overwhelming, a source of comfort and dependency that later shaped his addictions and relationships. Fame brought money, but not freedom. The poverty of his childhood was replaced by control, isolation, and exploitation. Managers became gatekeepers. His life became a prison disguised as success. Elvis never stopped being that frightened child trying to hold on to love before it disappeared. His childhood didn't teach humility, it taught terror of abandonment. 3. Jimi Hendrix, survival before stardom. Jimi Hendrix grew up in chaos marked by neglect, instability, and exposure to violence. His childhood lacked consistency, safety, and emotional protection. At times, he was effectively homeless, moving between relatives, unsafe environments, and uncertainty. Home was not a refuge. It was something to escape. Alcoholism and emotional collapse surrounded him. Hendrix learned early that adults were unreliable and that survival depended on music became his shelter. It wasn't just expression, it was defense. His experimental sound mirrored a fractured inner world shaped by constant adaptation. Hendrix didn't pursue fame for recognition. He pursued it for freedom. But fame recreated the chaos he had always known. His childhood trauma conditioned him to endure exploitation rather than resist it. That endurance, once necessary for survival, eventually became fatal. Jimmy survived his childhood. He didn't survive its echo. For Eric Clapton, the child who was lied to. Eric Clapton's childhood was built on a fundamental lie. He was raised believing his grandparents were his parents, while his real mother was introduced to him as his sister. For years, this false reality shaped his sense of self. Love came with conditions. Truth was hidden. Identity was unstable before it even formed. When Clapton eventually learned the truth, the damage was irreversible. The revelation didn't simply confuse him, it collapsed his emotional foundation. The people he trusted most had rewritten his life without consent. That betrayal planted deep feelings of rejection, shame, and unworthiness. He learned early that intimacy could not be trusted to survive honesty. Clapton turned inward. He didn't rage or rebel openly. He withdrew. His emotional restraint became his armor. Music became the only place where truth could exist without punishment. His guitar didn't express joy, it mourned absence. Each note carried restrained grief and unspoken longing. Addiction later filled the emotional vacuum created in childhood. Heroin and alcohol became substitutes for safety and control. Clapton didn't lose himself to substances by accident. He used them to anesthetize a wound that formed before he had the language to describe it. 5. Janis Joplin bullied into isolation. Joplin's childhood was shaped by relentless bullying and social rejection. In her Texas hometown, she was mocked for her looks, her intelligence, and her refusal to fit into rigid gender expectations. Teachers watched. Classmates participated. No one intervened. Janis learned early that visibility meant punishment. Being different came with a price. Isolation became her default state. Alcohol wasn't rebellion, was survival. Long before fame, drinking allowed her to tolerate rooms she was never welcomed into. On stage, she screamed what she had been trained to silence. Her voice carried rage, longing, and a desperate need to be seen. But applause never repaired the damage. Fame didn't erase the childhood belief that she was fundamentally unwanted. Janis didn't die because she lived too hard. She died because she never believed she deserved to live gently. 6. Ozzy Osbourne's violence as Normality Osbourne grew up in extreme poverty in post-war Birmingham. In a home defined by chaos and fear, overcrowding, constant tension, and untreated trauma were normal. Violence was not an exception, it was routine. He struggled with undiagnosed dyslexia, fell behind in school, and became an easy target for bullying. As a child, Ozzy experienced sexual abuse, a trauma he would carry silently for decades. Crime became familiar. Jail didn't shock him, it felt like an extension of home. Survival meant emotional numbness. Feeling nothing was safer than feeling everything. Music offered escape, but it never healed the wound. His later excesses weren't acts of rebellion or spectacle. They were symptoms. Ozzy didn't invent darkness for the stage. He simply brought his childhood with him. 7. Brian Wilson. Terror. Behind the smile, Brian Wilson grew up under the rule of a violently abusive father who used fear as discipline. Physical beatings, humiliation, and psychological control were constant. Music was encouraged, but only as a tool of dominance. Mistakes were punished. Success was never enough. As a child, Brian developed anxiety. He learned to retreat inward, building an internal world where he could survive. His melodies sounded joyful, but they were constructed from terror. Every harmony masked a threat. When fame arrived, it didn't free him. It magnified the pressure his father had instilled. Brian Wilson's childhood didn't simply traumatize him, it altered his perception of reality. The Beach Boys' Sunshine was built on fear, control, and a frightened child trying to stay invisible. 8. David Bowie, escaping the family curse. David Bowie grew up surrounded by mental illness and emotional instability. Family members suffered breakdowns, institutionalization, and psychological collapse. From a young age, Bowie feared that madness was inevitable, that it lived in his blood. His childhood was quiet, but heavy. Observation replaced participation. Detachment became protection. Bowie learned that identity was fragile and potentially dangerous. Reinvention wasn't artistic indulgence, it was survival. Each persona was a shield against collapse. Bowie didn't create characters to impress audiences. He created them to outrun fear. His childhood taught him that staying still meant being consumed. Transformation became his only defense. 9. Kurt Cobain. Never belonging anywhere. Kurt Cobain's childhood fractured when his parents divorced, destroying his sense of safety and permanence. He bounced between homes, relatives, and couches, never fully belonging anywhere. Each move reinforced the idea that he was unwanted. Depression arrived early and stayed. Kurt internalized rejection, turning anger inward. Music wasn't ambition, it was confession. His songs weren't performances. They were emotional autopsies. Pain wasn't something he explored, it was something he lived inside. Fame only intensified his isolation. The world watched, but no one reached him. Kurt never learned how to exist without pain. He only learned how to turn it into sound. Freddie Mercury. Separated and silenced. Freddie Mercury was sent away to boarding school at a young age, separated from family, culture, and emotional safety. Isolation arrived early. Bullying followed. Difference became something to hide. Survival meant silence. His sexuality, personality, and vulnerability were suppressed long before adulthood. Freddie learned to perform before he learned to trust. Confidence was constructed carefully, piece by piece, as armor. On stage, he was limitless, commanding, fearless, divine. Offstage, he remained guarded and controlled. His childhood taught him that authenticity came with risk. Freddie Mercury's tragedy wasn't weakness. It was a lifetime spent hiding in plain sight. Fame did not erase the past. Money didn't undo the damage. Applause didn't heal what was broken in silence. These artists didn't carry trauma into music. They built music on top of it. Some survived, some collapsed, some disappeared quietly, but none escaped unchanged. When we listen to their songs, we're not just hearing talent, we're hearing childhoods that never ended, and that may be the darkest truth of all.